Fast forward, and Drippy Woo is standing with Jinho in front of their first raid gate. Jinho looking up like he just saw God's front door. This gate is massive. Rizzy Woo barely had time to roll his eyes before reporters swarmed them, pelting them with questions, the nosiest ones prying into his relationship with Yoo Soo-hyun. My glorious king side-eyed Chief Woo Jin-chul and said, "I thought my personal info was private. What happened?" Chief Woo hit him with the reality check. "We can hide your details, but we can't stop people from tracking where gates pop up. Oh, and maybe be careful what you post online." That's when Rizzy Woo remembered that selfie on Instagram. He sighed. Before heading in, Jinho brought up hiring a mining team because he knew damn well he wasn't built for labor, but Drippy Woo just smirked. My shadows got it covered. Chief Woo checked the mana levels of Rizzy Woo's minions and nearly choked on his own disbelief. Every single one was B rank or higher. He then informed Drippy Woo that the chairman sent him to observe the raid just to make sure everything was safe. Drippy Woo raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure you'll be okay in there?" Fast forward 5 minutes and Chief Woo is sweating harder than a liar on a polygraph as he watches Rizzy Woo's army bulldoze a rank Nagas like they were level 1 mobs. Elite hunters struggle against these, but these creatures weren't struggling at all. If anything, they were having a feast. His eyes locked onto Igris. That one is especially dangerous. Watching the Red Knight slice through enemies like he was born for the kill, Chief Woo realized, oh, we are not the same. Then he saw something even more insane. Lightning magic that only top-tier mages can use was unleashed every time Igris was swinging his sword. Jinchul wondered, is that really an A rank? He muttered before questioning his own existence. Then, like every man who encounters someone new, he thought to himself, if I fought that thing, would I even survive? Meanwhile, Rizzy Woo was dealing with a more immediate problem. An ant, maybe the same one that Nick the healer girl, was munching on a dead monster. My glorious king didn't hesitate to kick some sense into him. He yeeted the thing straight into the ceiling, saying, I told you not to eat those. Do you have any idea how much these corpses are worth? Turning to his lower-ranked shadows, he ordered them to get back to mining those mana crystals. Chief Woo, watching all this, thought, this isn't just a one-man assault squad, this is something else entirely. Just as the last of the minions were wiped out, the boss finally decided to make its grand entrance. Drippy Woo smirked and gave the command. Those of you still working can stay, ordering the rest to return. Chief Woo blinked. Why dismiss them? Your summons could solo the boss with their eyes closed. Rizzy Woo just summoned his daggers with a smirk and replied, if I rely on my shadows too much, I'll get rusty. Then, like a goddamn anime protagonist, he blitzed up the boss's body, moving so fast it barely had time to react. One clean slice and its face was split in two before Rizzy Woo flipped through the air like he was showing off. Chief Woo was left staring, slack-jawed. Years of hunting, and he had never seen anything like this. After bagging the kill, my glorious king checked his stats. Another level up and an upgrade to Shadow Exchange. The cooldown dropped by an hour. He quickly realized that if he kept leveling this skill, he could teleport wherever he wanted and keep his family safe. Meanwhile, Chief Woo was still processing the disrespect he just witnessed, staring at the corpse. He thought to himself that Naga scales are tough enough to be turned into shields. Yet my glorious king sliced through them with two daggers like it was nothing. The disrespect was astronomical. Then Rizzy Woo flexed even harder, activating Shadow Extraction. The boss's corpse twitched, a shadow emerging. A notification popped up. Congrats, you just buffed your new soldier. It starts at level 13. Rizzy Woo examined his latest recruit. It was the same rank as Tusk, but smaller. That was unusual, as most shadows either stayed the same size or grew upon extraction. Yet the mana this one was radiating was off the charts. Almost as strong as Tusk, he named it Jima because why not? As he arose, Jima, our resident fanboy, Jinho, was looking at Jinwoo, admiring my glorious king's powers, thinking how awesome he was. But before he could complete that thought, the cave started shaking, and Jinho immediately looked at him and said, we should leave. Drippy Woo glanced at the boss's body, debating what to do with it, before Tusk casually emerged from the gate carrying the damn thing on his shoulder like it was a grocery bag. The second they stepped out, reporters lost their minds, snapping pictures as they recognized the summons. The sheer flex of walking out with the boss's body like a trophy. Chief Woo, on the other hand, looked like he had just survived the apocalypse. Later, he sat in the chairman's office, still rattled. What I saw wasn't a raid, it was a massacre as he gave him a detailed report of what happened there. The chairman absorbed every word, realizing something something chilling. Hunters from Korea, no, from all over the world, are about to witness a shift in power. Meanwhile, in Japan, the sky itself seemed to crack as a massive red gate loomed above, signaling that something far worse was about to begin. Across Japan, chaos was brewing as people debated the sudden appearance of the Red Gate and the surge in high-level dungeons. The country was on edge, especially since all the major guilds had been summoned for an emergency meeting. The situation was so bad that even the Draw Sword Guild members looked stressed as they made their way toward the meeting room. Watching them, some people whispered about how President Matsumoto Shigeo of the Japanese Hunters Association was spiraling without Goto Ryuji in his corner. They found it hilarious, actually. Since the association used to have a monopoly on S-rank hunters, it was nice to see them struggle for once. Rumors started spreading that the guild might lose its spot at the top of Japan's rankings. Sugimoto overheard this nonsense and turned to glare at them with the kind of death stare that made grown men rethink their life choices. The trash talkers backed off immediately, realizing they didn't have the respawn timer for this kind of smoke. After they scurried away, Minoru sighed, noting that people never dared to speak like that when Goto Fraud was alive. Kanai added that word on the street was that the Black Tiger Guild and Snow Cloud Guild were planning to merge. If that happened, they'd have 4 S-rank hunters matching Draw Sword's numbers. Sugimoto didn't even flinch and said, "Weaklings with S-rank titles are still weak." Meanwhile, in a government meeting room, chaos continued. A furious official demanded to know why the Hunters Association had yet to respond to the S-rank gate that popped up right in the middle of Tokyo. Was there a plan, or were they just going to let the country get deleted? Matsumoto Shigeo had no choice but to admit it. Japan's current S-rank hunters weren't capable of clearing an S-rank gate unless they got national-level hunters involved. Someone immediately pointed out the obvious. The Jeju Island raid already proved what happens when underleveled hunters go against an S-rank dungeon, and Japan could not afford another wipe. Someone suggested calling in Thomas Andre, the American national level hunter, but Japan simply didn't have the funds to afford someone that OP. Plus, with the increase in gates worldwide, every country was busy hoarding mercenary hunters for themselves, meaning Japan was fresh out of outside help. The room fell into tense silence until Sugimoto spoke up, casually mentioning that there was one man who might be willing to help for the right price. The barrier expert, Yuri Orlov, cut to Drippy Woo, chilling in his car, staring at his stats like a true min-maxer, processing the fact that he was now level 101. At level 100, my glorious king unlocked the key to the Kartanon Temple. At level 101, all his job-specific skills got a power boost, and now he was already scheming about what kind of broken upgrade level 102 would bring. As he stepped out of his car, he spotted Mommy Cha standing in the parking lot. The moment she saw him, she turned on her heel and started walking away. Instantly, Rizzy Woo appeared right next to her with that signature teleport spam and asked why she was running. If she was going to avoid him, why even come to his office in the first place? Flustered, Mommy Cha stuttered something about her car still being parked there, and Drippy Woo realized she never got to take it last time since he had yanked her across the city with Shadow Exchange. Then Mommy Cha got serious and asked if he had time to talk. He asked about what. Min Byung-gu left him a message. That got Aura Farmer's attention real fast. Since he was already looking for answers, he told her they should discuss this somewhere private. At the office, she asked why it was so empty. He told her Jinho was still back at the dungeon site. Realizing she was alone with him, she immediately turned pink. Meanwhile, my glorious king just asked how Min Byung-gu managed to leave a message. She explained that while unconscious on Jeju Island, she had drifted in darkness before a hand reached out to pull her up. It was Min Byung-gu. They had a little chit-chat about how he was fitting in as Drippy Woo's new slave, and then he told Mommy Cha that Drippy Woo's true powers are strong and frightening. He warned her that his power was overwhelming and terrifying, something Jinwoo needed to understand. He tried to say more about the true nature of Rizzy Woo's army, but disappeared before he could finish. Later, my glorious king sat inside a dungeon, deep in thought. True or not, he needed to figure out the source of his power. It was more important than just leveling up. Jinho, sitting next to him, whined about why they even needed to be here when the summons could just handle everything. Drippy Woo shook his head and said that these idiots needed supervision. Jinho then asked about his sister. Rizzy Woo explained she was doing fine after the school dungeon break, but doctors told her to rest, so he had stationed his most trusted shadows to protect her. The last level up came with a lot of power-ups, and one of them was shared senses that allowed Jinwoo to share his senses with his shadows. He decided to check up on Gina using shadow vision. Looking through Baru's eyes, he saw the little guy lounging and watching TV while Gina was asleep on the couch. Of course, my glorious king sighed, wondering if that was really Baru's taste in entertainment. He wondered if these historical dramas were the reason why that dramatic aunt had started talking funny. He decided to check in on everyone else too. His mother was out grocery shopping. Hunter Baek-Yoon-ho and Hunter Choi Jong-in were bickering as usual. Then he shifted to Mommy Cha and immediately regretted it because she was in the shower, realizing that Sung Pervy Woo cut the connection immediately. Jinho, who had no idea what just happened, asked if he had dozed off, but Rizzy, who was too busy having an existential crisis, knew he needed to apologize. Maybe a nice lunch would be enough to erase that mental image from his brain. Jinho then asked Jinwoo if he had heard the news about that massive S-rank gate that had popped up in Shinjuku with less than 3 days before a dungeon break. The Japanese government was scrambling for hunters and had been calling in everyone. Jinho asked if they had contacted my glorious king. Drippy Woo confirmed that they had, but he had something more important to deal with. Before Jinho could ask what in the dungeon it was, Jinwoo's thoughts drifted as he looked at the key, and he wondered if he'll get to know the truth behind his powers. He decided not to think about it, as only one day was left, so he'll get to know that pretty soon. Meanwhile, in Japan, the circus had already started. Yuri Orlov, the strongest hunter in Russia, was introducing himself to Sugimoto, a Japanese official. The guy was all arrogance from the jump, calling himself the greatest support-type hunter in the world. Then he mockingly brought up the Draw Sword Guild's report and straight up asked if Japan really only had 6 S-rank hunters to throw at this mess. Sugimoto confirmed it. Most of their high ranks were tied up dealing with the A-rank gates all over the country. Even their own guild had to leave one behind while sending 3 to Shinjuku. Yuri scoffed, calling it pathetic before casually dropping his price tag. He told them that he would hold the gate back for a neat $3.6 billion a year, which was $10 million a day. Hearing that Sugimoto was stunned, Yuri just smirked, saying compared to Thomas Andre's insane 36 trillion, he was practically a steal. Minoru, one of the Japanese hunters, turned to Kenzaki, asking what the hell the drunk was saying. Kenzaki, who understood Russian, responded that he wasn't sure, but whatever it wasn't good. Yuri then hit them with the ultimate question. Were they trying to save their country or just their wallets? He even threw in some extra insults to spice things up. Minoru caught on immediately, asking if he had just been disrespected. Kenzaki confirmed that even if he didn't catch all the words, the meaning was loud and clear. Suddenly, before they could react, they were trapped inside a magical barrier, unable to move. Yuri grinned and told them they wouldn't be taking a single step without his permission. Minoru struggled in shock. He wondered, how was an S rank like him getting locked down so easily? Yuri turned back to Sugimoto, still smug as ever, and promised to stop the S rank gate. He'd even be generous enough to let them go free of charge. Sugimoto had no better option. He reluctantly agreed, but told Yuri he needed to make a call first. Back in Korea, my glorious king was getting ready to dive into the double dungeon. Before heading out, his mother gently asked if she should be worried. He gave her a reassuring smile, telling her it was just an appointment. Once the timer on the key ran out, it revealed the gate's location, and instantly his mood switched. The gate was at Gina's school. Without hesitation, he moved. When he arrived, Hunter Association agents were standing guard outside. He walked up and asked how long the gate had been there. One of the agents answered, 3 days. It was just a C rank, and the hunter squad had already gone in 2 hours ago. That was all my glorious king needed to hear. His aura snapped into focus, and he told them to call the squad back immediately. If they stayed inside, they would die. Without waiting for them to react, he stepped forward, announcing he would bring them back himself. Inside the gate, the assault squad had already made it deep into the dungeon. They reached the boss room, but the door refused to budge. As the assault squad was busy debating their next move, a voice casually dropped a bomb from behind them, saying that it's a trap. They all spun around, ready to throw hands, only to find Rizzy Woo standing there like he owned the place. Suspicious, one of the hunters asked Jinwoo, who the hell was he exactly? What was he doing in this dungeon? My glorious king met them with a calm flex. I'm a survivor of a double dungeon. That was enough for one of them to connect the dots. Wait, Aren't you that new S-rank hunter from Korea? He walked up to the door, and a system notification flashed. The gate to the Kartanon Temple is currently locked. Please insert the key. As he pulled out the temple key, he noted how different this was from last time. When the door creaked open, the hunters gawked in disbelief. They had thrown everything at it, and it hadn't even twitched. One of them stepped forward, puffing up his chest, and said, "This dungeon was bought by the Dragon Guild, saying that it's their property and telling Jinwoo that even though he is an S-rank, he can't just order them around." The others backed him up with some weak-ass bravado. My glorious king didn't even flinch and said, "I won't stop you. Anyone who wants to enter, feel free." The bravest idiot of the group took the bait and stepped in, only for the system to hit Jinwoo with an alert. An individual without the temple key has entered. Access denied. A split second later, a stone statue came to life and swung a sword the size of a car door toward the poor bastard. With insane speed, my glorious king yanked him back, saving his life. He shot them all a look. Every monster in this dungeon is like that. You still want to go in? He turned to the squad and gave them their next move. Call the Hunter Association. Tell them a double dungeon has appeared. Then, without another word, he walked through the gate. The door slammed shut behind him, sealing him in. As he stepped inside the chamber, it lit up. Shadows stretched across the room as dozens of stone statues stood eerily still. At the center, an unmoving figure sat surrounded by its silent minions. My glorious king stepped forward, taking it all in. This was where it all began, but something felt different now. He could feel it in his bones. Scanning the statues, he muttered, "These aren't monsters or living beings. They're puppets, and there's only one hand pulling the strings." He locked onto the source and demanded, "Won't you say something? Why won't you answer me?" The silence broke as the winged statue's eyes gleamed with an eerie light. Grinning like a maniac, he said to Jinwoo, "At last, you have arrived." While Jinwoo was busy with his side quest over in Japan, the walking magic battery Yuri Orlov had just touched down at the airport, and the press swarmed him like he was some A-list celebrity. Ignoring the cameras flashing in his face, they hit him with the big question and asked him exactly how he is planning to block off the gate. Cool as ever, he laid out his game plan. He told the press that he'd pull out his go-to trick, carving a massive magic circle around the gate, pouring in his mana, and trapping whatever nightmare fuel was inside. When asked if he could really lock down an S-rank gate solo, he admitted he couldn't hold a barrier by himself, but with enough mana crystals placed around Tokyo, the circle would siphon their energy and evolve into an impenetrable wall. Staring straight into the cameras, he dropped his ego-fueled promise. "I'm going to save your lives, so make sure you remember that." Watching this unfold, Chairman Go-Gun, he sighed. Not sure if he can pull this off, but he sure as hell knew what happens if he fails. Then he turned to Woo Jin Chol and got straight to business. He wanted to know what my glorious king was up to these days. Woo reported that Drippy Woo was out farming gates in Seoul on some dungeon speedrun grind, telling Gun-hee that the Ajin Guild had filed requests for permits on a bunch of gates. Unfortunately, those gates were in territories managed by the White Tiger Hunters and Fiend Guilds, which was bound to ruffle some feathers. Despite the incoming drama, the chairman gave his approval. Before leaving, Woo took a call. The voice on the other end delivered something interesting. Another gate had popped up at a school recently trashed by orcs. It seemed minor at first until they realized it was hiding a double dungeon. More importantly, my glorious king had already entered it. Back inside the death trap, Jinwoo stood before the living statue. The thing shattered a stone slab and spoke, "I see you have finally made it this far." Seeing the thing destroy that slab, Jinwoo asked him if it was okay to destroy that like this, but then he muttered and said, "So I guess those commandments never meant anything." The statue, still grinning like a maniac, answered him, saying that they did mean something, but now they are not important anymore. My glorious king narrowed his eyes and asked the statue, "Who even are you? Were you the one who dragged me here?" The creature answered with the most cryptic nonsense ever and said, "Yes, but you're asking the wrong question. Instead of wondering about me, you should be asking, who are you?" Before Drippy Woo could tell this rock reject to speak normally, it announced, "The final test begins now. If you're still standing at the end, I'll tell you everything." Then the statues started moving, closing in like they were programmed for violence. Instinct kicked in, and my glorious king reached for his shadow army, but before he could unleash his loyal soldiers, the being snapped its fingers and cut him off and said, That won't do. This is a test. No cheating allowed. He announced, "Your little minions mean nothing to me. I only care about you." A system message popped up, rubbing salt in the wound. No potions, no items, no quest rewards, no status recovery, no leaving until the test is over. Drippy Woo took it all in and muttered, "So this is how it's gonna be, huh?" Just then, one of the stone statues lunged straight at Rizzy-Woo, swinging its massive weapon at him. But my glorious king was already 2 steps ahead. He thought about how his inventory was still in play, which meant it was time for some old-school hands. No summons, no cheats, just raw strength. Before the attack could land, he snatched the sword mid-swing like it was a twig and shattered it with his bare hands. Then, just to be disrespectful, he took 1/2 of the broken blade and yeeted it straight into the statue's face. But the bastard was tough, and it didn't go down. The thing started yanking the shard out of its head. But before it could, Drippy Woo was already airborne. His foot connected with the shard, hammering it deeper into the creature's stone skull and sending it crashing to the ground. That's when the rest of the statues realized they were in a survival horror game. They charged in desperate to swarm him, but it was pointless. Rizzy-Woo moved like a shadow, slipping between their strikes. He leapt into the air, dagger in hand, and slammed it straight into another golem's head, sending it crumbling into rubble. Then his eyes locked onto a distant archer statue that had the audacity to think it was safe. A single arrow cut through the air, aimed right at him. In a flash, he sliced the arrow in half mid-flight, and for extra disrespect, he kicked one of the broken pieces straight back at the archer statue, obliterating its stone face. Every movement was precise. Every kill was clean. Watching from above, the floating entity observed his handiwork and said, "You've achieved so much with the body of a human. I am truly impressed." Rizzy-Woo kept going. Every statue that once looked like a teleporting blur was now just another target. His movements were sharp, his reactions instant. He could do this. The floating creature above smirked, amused, but not done. Yet another test. Truly impressive growth, but it's still too early for this to end. Suddenly, a deep rumbling filled the air. The remaining statues stopped as if they too felt the presence of something greater. Slowly, Rizzy-Woo turned. And there it was, a behemoth of stone towering over even the monstrous figures he'd been fighting. The entity above chuckled darkly and declared, "Now it's time to worship the god." The chapter begins with Chairman Go Gun-hee, who was sitting in his office ready to mind his business when Japan rolled up with a fat bribe and a desperate vibe. Matsumoto Shigeo slid over a contract that basically said, "Here, have all the Jeju Island essence stones. We're broke and scared. Please send the Aura Farmer to save their asses." Gun-hee read that nonsense and told them that Jinwoo was not affiliated with the Hunters Association, and so they can't directly order him. Matsumoto told Gun-hee that he knows that very well, and all he wants is for them to arrange a meeting with my glorious king. Hearing that, Gun-hee mentally went, "There's no way you all are throwing away money like that just for a conversation with Rizzy-Woo." But then it clicked to him that Goto Ryuji's clown ass was dead, and now Japan had the defensive capabilities of wet cardboard. Matsumoto tried to keep it cute, but Chairman Go hit him with that Uno reverse. He kicked the translators out, switched to fluent Japanese, and said, "Cut the bullshit. You think I don't know the Blade Guild ghosted your crusty ass? After Goto got deleted, the Blade Guild stopped taking your association's money and went solo. It only took one look at the paperwork to know your empire is collapsing and your grip is looser than a level 1 in an S-rank dungeon." Then, to make it spicy, Chairman Go slapped a recording device on the table, the same one used by Goto's team, and revealed it had been feeding intel straight into Matsumoto's comms. Flexing his menacing aura, Gun-hee started interrogating him, and Matsumoto made a face as if his browser history had been made public. Then Gun-hee crushed the recording device with one hand like a soda can, and shattered the table beneath it. My man was so pissed that he wanted to play goddamn Jenga with Matsumoto's spine. He told him straight, "If Tokyo gets clapped by that gate, your head's going on the chopping block. And when the world asks who fumbled the bag, the answer will be you." But Gun-hee wasn't that petty. He wasn't going to let a country get clapped because of one man's dirty tricks. Now thank Aura Farmer for not letting Asia burn. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, the party didn't stop for Rizzy-Woo. Stone statues were pulling up like they wanted beef, and he was dishing out hands non-stop. But these stone bastards just kept coming. And to make things worse, the big boy in the back started charging, its beam eyes glowing like it wanted to delete the entire screen. Jinwoo clocked it instantly. There was no dodging that mess, so he used Commander's Touch to lift a couple of statues and stack a meat shield in front of him, but the attack still broke through like it was nothing. My glorious king barely dodged, but it was clear if he took a full blast head-on, it was lights out. Rizzy Woo would have turned into BBQ'd Woo. Just then, the commander's authority got its final upgrade, but Jinwoo didn't exactly have the time to celebrate. He looked up at that giant stone menace and decided, screw it. First I take down the god, then I delete the rest. Drippy Woo dipped forward so fast the floor cracked like it owed him money. The statue paused, all smug like, ha ha, got him, until Rizzy Woo materialized again, ready to hand out hands. The moment that Boulder for Brains loaded up another punch, Drippy Woo hit Monarch's domain and zipped behind it before it could blink. Then he casually stacked Ruler's authority on top, like he was layering a smoothie of pain, and said, guess what? I can bend gravity now. He barely even used mana, but the results were huge, like he was tossing a mountain with pocket change. He pulled out Mutilation and went for the statue's face, but those Demon King daggers barely made a dent, which pissed him off even more. So he ditched the finesse and went raw muscle, targeting a crack in its head and hammering down like he was trying to split a coconut with his fists. The statue freaked out like it just saw its insurance premium spike. Above them, that winged creeper was watching like, wow, I didn't think he'd go caveman on my fancy stone buddy. But here we are. Meanwhile, Rizzy Woo was locked in rage mode, punching the life out of that oversized paperweight until he screamed, "Let me show you what level 103 means," and slammed it so hard it ragdolled into the floor. Then, without taking a breath, he jumped into the mosh pit of baby statues and used Dominator's touch to turn them into stone pancakes in one swoop. When the dust settled, Drippy Woo turned to the floating problem in the sky. Who had the nerve to slow clap like this was theater class? After he had clapped the stone statues, Jinwoo expected answers, but Bird Boy hit him with a plot twist, saying that the test isn't done. A new quest popped up with the worst kind of timer. 10 minutes or your heart stops. The winged bastard floated down all smug and dropped the lore bomb. I am the final test. Rizzy Woo asked who the hell he even was, and this emo pigeon said, I am the architect of the system. Are you satisfied with that answer? Outside the dungeon, Woo Jin Chul pulled up with 7 elite hunters like this was Fast and Furious, S rank edition. But the second they got near the gate, the vibe shift hit hard. Bone-chilling mana oozed out like the dungeon itself was holding a grudge.